So as I was getting ready for the talk tonight, I was trying to find a song, I Adore You. And so I was out Googling this, trying to find this song. And what actually came up was Miley Cyrus's Adore You. so I was, never heard that song before. So, and then I couldn't believe she almost had, I think, maybe 1 billion hits. And of course, right next to, as soon as you hit on somebody that's super popular, then up popped, Bruno Mars and Adele, and amazing. I mean, I look at the number of people who will watch these videos as I'm watching these videos, and the time just flies. I mean, they're kind of catchy tunes, and some of them even have a decent message. But I think, to me, as I, sat there and whatever, half an hour went by, and I was like, wait a second, what am I doing? It just occurred to me, like, this is really how adoration probably works in our daily life without us even calling it adoration. Adoration means really, it's just, what do I worship? Where do I spend my time and energy? I think that could be music. I mean, I can see how somebody could be, into music, and really, that could be their thing. Maybe they play music, or they just love to listen to it, or what's the latest song? It really speaks to me. So there's all kinds of things that we adore, and we'll talk maybe more as we go on about why that can go wrong. But really what we're talking about tonight is something that we'll then later do, which is adoration of the Eucharist. So adoration of the Eucharist. So I think this is something that for some people it's pretty new. If it's new for you, that's fine. I mean, hopefully you've at least heard the term Eucharistic adoration. So as I was thinking in my own life, when did I experience Eucharistic adoration first? I have to actually, my parents started Eucharistic adoration at our parish in Milwaukee with a group of people. They started 24-hour Eucharistic adoration. I didn't really know too much about it. My mom and dad were always doing church stuff, and we were like, that's awesome because you're God, good for you. We can do what we want because, we're 9 boys and 3 girls, and we can tear things apart, and then they'd come back to a mess. But anyway, they would go and do church stuff, and they would do adoration. Okay, great, and then they were doing renew, and they were, whatever it was, I didn't know, it was mom and dad's holy stuff. Good for you guys. But occasionally, especially when maybe we needed it, Dad would say, I want you to come with us. You're coming to adoration. And so, you'd go there and you'd sit there. And it'd be quiet in the church. And you'd be like, what am I supposed to do? This is so boring. And I've got to sit with my parents to boot. And so, you got to kind of look like you're holy, or at least interested. And that was my first exposure to Eucharistic. It was forced Eucharistic adoration. Probably not the best way to start. So guys, I apologize if that's how you feel. The young people here, we're going to experience if it's forced. The good news is I think it still had an effect on me. Because adoration is really spending time with Jesus in a unique way, where he's exposed. Really, we would say his body, we believe in the host, is exposed. And so we're looking upon Jesus in a unique way, not like a statue, it's neat, or a picture can really move us. But Eucharistic adoration, and especially exposition, I think is a unique way of being with Jesus. I should have known I was doomed, but my next sort of experience with Eucharistic adoration, when I was in college, when I was going to college, they had redone the dorm I was going to live in because they had a lot of people coming to school, and they needed more space. So they redid the basement of the dorm and put rooms down there. And, they were fine rooms. But I ended up at the end of the hall, and the guy that I was with, he was rushing a fraternity. And so I guess you might say he was doing adoration in a different sense, but a lot of times he was coming home late and he was out, partying and stuff. And so I couldn't study very well in the room because he'd come in and he'd be whatever, loud and stuff. And so I found this little room next door. You actually had to go out the hall door, and then I shared a wall with the chapel. It was a Catholic college. There was a chapel in the basement of this dormitory, and I would go there because it was quiet. And like it was yesterday, I can picture myself literally, it was a nice carpeted floor too. And I would literally lay there, and sometimes I would just sleep, But what I didn't realize is really I was in the presence of the Lord. The monstrance was there, the tabernacle was there. And I guess the good news for me at that time is nobody ever went to that room. So, sadly, I suppose you could say at a Catholic college, that was the quietest room in the dorm. There was nobody there. And so I went there just because, again, I could read, I could study, I could, sleep sometimes, or at least take a nap. And it was quiet. But again, the Lord was present there. And so he was moving, even though maybe I didn't perceive it. And so never feel, I guess I say this because sometimes for us, religion is about how I feel about it. So if I were to say, how did I feel when I was, a 7th or 8th grader and I was being, taken to adoration because I had to go, I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel holy. I felt like I had to be there. Maybe occasionally you'd have these little moments where you'd feel God's presence. But that doesn't mean that God is not moving. And so I encourage you, if you start to enter into this journey, really, of Eucharistic adoration, don't go there purely for what do I get out of it, or how do I feel when I'm there, or even how do I feel when I leave. Spending time with the Lord is always fruitful. It's always fruitful in our spiritual life. So I think the image to me during this time of year that comes to mind when you use the word adoration is the 3 wise men. And we're going to celebrate them this coming weekend, the Epiphany. And I'm going to talk more on the weekend, but what really strikes me about the wise men this year, because I always try to kind of prepare, and so I've been reading, and is the distance they came. And I shared this at Mass yesterday. They believe they're from Persia, that they worshipped in a religion called Zoroastrianism. They think they were of the priestly class. So they were religious leaders in a whole different religion that worshipped light. In fact, fire is a big part of their religion. And so is astrology, looking at the stars. And that's really where they first encounter the arrival of the king. There's a new star that to them signifies a king has been born. Now, I can't even imagine what kind of movement happens inside of, Balthazar, or I can't remember all of them, Melchior, or like what goes through their head that they say, we're going to travel to wherever the star takes us. They estimate that 1,000 to 1,200 miles by camel is 6 to 8 months. And then, we'll have adoration here at St. Mary's, and it'll be like cricket. Where's everybody? Father, I'm super busy. I don't live in town. Okay, well, I challenge you to outdo the 3 wise men, and I can't even imagine. They're not even Catholic. They're not Christian. They're not Jewish. They're of no religion that we're familiar with. So I think it challenges our excuses when they show up at great cost to themselves. And their whole purpose is to bring something. They come to give. Again, I think that kind of flies in the face of spirituality for us, because we think, well, no, Jesus, my gift was I showed up. I came, I got here. I mean, now give me. And of course, God is good, so he's going to share with you his love. But that's not what the wise men come for. They actually come to bring something, to bring gifts, and lay them at his feet. And I can imagine that they are the ones instead who receive. And it makes literally no sense if you didn't know who Jesus is. It makes no sense. Why would you travel 1,200 miles to see the baby of poor people? In a cave. Maybe at that time they had gotten to a house. No sense. Makes no sense. It would never happen. Certainly, they wouldn't prostrate themselves, right? Because in their culture, they're respected men. People prostrate to them. But it says when they enter, they find, got the Holy Family up here, they find the Holy Family, and it says they prostrated themselves. Prostration, by the way, is kind of a lost prayer form. It's a great one when you're tired. Prostration is when you lay on the ground. It's actually part of the rite of ordination. And if you ever get to an ordination, one of the things that the candidate does is they actually lay on the ground. They lay on the ground. And so it says they come in and they prostrate themselves before this child. And so something about him affects them. Something about his presence. And again, they're not Catholic, they're not Christian, there's no religious reason. But it's encountering a person, it's encountering Christ that puts them on the ground in adoration. And so I think they're a great image for us, and maybe one that really challenges us when we talk about Eucharistic adoration. A few witness stories beyond mine that really moved me in adoration. One is from Justin Cardinal Regali. He was the Cardinal Archbishop of Philadelphia, but he was also the Archbishop of St. Louis when I was in the seminary, at Kenrick Seminary. And he liked to come to the seminary sometimes. He had been worked with the Holy Father, St. John Paul II. And he traveled with the saint, with the Holy Father at the time. And he would go with him to English-speaking countries. He was part of the diplomatic corps of the Vatican for years. And so he shared with us a really, I think, not just inspiring, but almost surreal when you really can picture it. So he said John Paul was very energetic. St. John Paul. He loved to ski, he was an athlete. So, when he would show up in a country, he came ready to go. And I think some people attributed it to the fact that, he's energetic, he was young, he was only 56 when he was made the Pope. And so he was just young. And so, that's why he was able to run around the world and do all this amazing stuff. But the story that Cardinal Regali shared, they were in Africa. And if you ever watch the Pope and you look at his schedule, it's unreal. I couldn't do the Pope schedule for a day. They just do thing after thing after thing after, and they're big things. I mean, they're meeting with heads of states and, and so anyway, he had one of those days. Lands in a foreign country. By the way, that's exhausting, period. Ray looks like he's still tired from going to Mexico. So you fly to a foreign country, you show up, you're on right away. As soon as you get off the plane as the Pope. And he spent a long day. Now it's like 10 o'clock at night, and they're back at the local bishop's residence. And they're sitting with John Paul, and they're kind of talking about the day. And Cardinal Rigali says, at one point he gets up, and he leaves the room, and they assume, oh, okay, he's going to bed. And there was a chapel between the sitting room they were in. The bishop had a chapel in his house, just outside. And so when they went out, they realized, oh, he's in the chapel. So then they all kind of, gave the Holy Father some space. He said about 15 minutes later, there were roars and cheers outside. All these young people. And they went out and they kind of, these bishops are like, is everything okay? Are we safe? They go outside. And John Paul had gone down to a lower part of the residence where he could be closer. And he was out on one of the balconies, and he's talking with these young people. And they're just cheering. And for Cardinal Rigali, it was like, that's where he gets his energy. He went from being exhausted to the Adoration Chapel, spent time with the love of his life, Jesus Christ, and it energized him. And then he went out and he gave it away. And that's our fear, right? No, Father, I can't do because I gotta protect my little piece of peace, or whatever it is we're trying to protect. Well, the reality is, the more we give, when you come to the Lord, it gives him more space to give you more. And the saints are the prime examples of this. What God does in a saint is he just makes, the little flower used to talk about vessels. She said, some of us are a thimble. A thimble's, you put it on your thumb when you're sewing so you don't stick your thumb. Some of us, maybe you're a thimble, that's okay. Some of us are thimbles. And so when you turn a thimble over and you fill it up, it's full. Some of us are cups, right? Same thing, you fill up a cup. It's holding a lot more than a thimble, but for a cup, it is full, right? Some of us might be a bucket, right? You can go on, a pool. That's what a saint is. God has just stretched their capacity to hold. And what do they hold? Him. Why? Because he longs to be with his people. He longs for it. And so when he gets a soul like St. John Paul, who's willing to expend, then he's like, I'm just going to give. So again, part of it, I think if we take our spiritual temperature, we say, I don't feel well, maybe the question is, are we giving too? Are you receiving? Yes. But are you giving? I remember one sister, she was in the cloister, and she shared a story about she had a great insight in prayer. And they spend their life in prayer. And she had shared it with another sister who ended up being kind of in charge of the novices. And so the sister turned around and shared this experience with a bunch of other sisters, and as if it was her own. And she was kind of like, that's kind of a turnoff. That was something I got in prayer. I mean, that was mine. That was my little nugget. I shared it with her just to be nice. That was my nugget. And in prayer, the Lord kind of corrected her and said, that was my nugget. That was my nugget. I shared it with you. It was meant to be shared. So again, we have to get away from adoration is about me to adoration is really about him. And he gives so that it can be given away. Another great example, and we have her relic here, is Mother Teresa of Calcutta. There's actually a good movie on Mother Teresa that came out. Maybe we could do a movie night some night. It's not, none are perfect, but it's pretty good. But one of the things about Mother Teresa is we just see the woman who's driven, who travels around the world to these poor people and picks them up off the street in thousands, and then goes around and talks about the poor all over the world. And again, I think we can be tempted to say, must be nice. Gosh, I don't think I could do that for a day. When I approach the first dying person and the smell, and they're on the street. You know, gosh, good for you, Mother Teresa. That's amazing. But to do it day after day. So here's her secret. And it's no secret, really, because it's part of the life of the Missionaries of Charity. They spend 2 hours every morning. So right now in, probably at this point in Calcutta, because it's about morning, they would be up and they would be praying in front of the Blessed Sacrament. It used to be, at first, it was just a half an hour, because she said there's so much work. And what she realized is, we need more time with the Lord. And the way she puts it is, how can you see Jesus Christ in the distressing disguise of the poor if you have not spent time with him first in the Eucharist? And so she connects them directly. Eucharistic adoration and prayer are necessary. They are the pillar of their ministry. She said, oftentimes, we are not social workers. Social worker works for the state of Nebraska, right? And they may work with poor people, which is great, good work. We are contemplatives, contemplation, in the heart of the world. So we bring the fruit of adoration to the world. So, again, this Eucharistic adoration, this is something that I think at some point we have to have, an epiphany moment. Maybe it's on I know some of you have gone on CEC. I know some of you have a commitment and you come here on Monday morning and you spend time in adoration here at St. Mary's Church. The fruit that I've heard from you is undeniable. And I didn't pay you any money to say that, right? That you came to me with that. Father, we love it. We can't wait for it. We long for that time. So that's, try to get a little closer to home. It's happening here Monday, is it 6 in the morning? Tuesday, sorry, my bad. Tuesday.
It's 6.
At 6 in the morning.
6 to 7.
6 to 7. So, and I really put this challenge before you because it's the challenge that, gosh, no, I forgot his name. He was the president at Steubenville College. Anyway, the priest, Franciscan priest. And he said to his spiritual director, I don't have time. I normally make an hour in the morning. I'm the president of a college. I'm swamped. I can't get into work and I can't get everything done. And so maybe that's you. You say, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a husband, I'm a, employee, I've got kids. We want to put them all up in front of Jesus. I love you, but, I can't be there. Sorry. Kind of like that scripture where, the wedding banquet, and he invites them all and they have good excuses. I think actually some of those are good I just got married, It doesn't seem like that really goes very far in that scripture, by the way, when they see, those folks are just excluded. So again, I put this story out as a challenge to those who say, I have no time. So the president of a university, and he went to his spiritual director, and he said, can I make a half an hour? I'll still go, but I can't do an hour, I don't have time. And he said, Father, if you can't do an hour, I want you to do 2. That's a good spiritual director. That's actually an Ignatian principle. Right, if we're shooting for 15 minutes in prayer and at minute 12 we're kind of like then we stay for 17 minutes. Right, again that's our natural. We have to work against our natural tendency to short circuit God. It blows me away that, and I'm not a parent, the way you guys are, but I drive by the Randolph Gym because it's right on Highway 20. So, you can't tell me, well, nobody's in town, Father. That's why they didn't come to evening mass, because they couldn't get out. Well, yeah, they could. They're just all parked up there. I was talking to a priest in the area, and he said, maybe we should have Bible study at halftime, or something. Now, I'm not saying, you shouldn't go to your children's games. I mean, that has a place in your life, sure, but it's not going to be an entry question into heaven, and it's not going to go on your tombstone. Made all my home games. Was the loudest guy in the stands to yell at the refs. Whatever. But that's the reality, guys, is you spend time on the things that you adore. The things that you adore. Maybe it's music, TV. I'm as guilty as the next person. And you spend hours. Spend hours and hours of our time, like sports. I like to watch basketball. I like college basketball. I mean, that's a 2+ hour commitment to watch a game. And then, somebody will, Father, can I see him? Yeah, I'll take it. I suppose I can squeeze you in, between the Duke game and, right? But that's how we do it, right? That's how we do it. I mean, let's be real. Maybe it's shopping. We say, oh, yeah, I need to pick up 1 or 2 things, and 2 hours later we're leaving the store with a cart full of stuff we don't need. But we put the time in. We put the time and the effort and the energy and the focus on things all the time. I just think what God would ask is, give me some of that. Give me some of that. One Lent, I would do this little, before I would turn on the TV, I would pray. And sometimes I would just say, I don't need to watch TV. Just a little prayer, just to say, am I doing this because I'm bored, or do I really want to watch TV? Is there something better I should be doing? To ask the Lord. So again, this call to Eucharistic adoration, there have been miracles. One of the things I'd like to do on KVSS, they have these Eucharistic miracles. It's kind of a traveling exhibit. And they're always advertising if any parish wants there. So I hope to bring it here. And what it is it's kind of the story of Eucharistic miracles around the world. So if you're like me, and you're a priest, everybody thinks, oh, every priest believes in the Blessed Sacrament and the true presence. But I was in Lanciano, Italy. It's just outside of Rome. It's a beautiful little, you have to take like one of these verniculars up this hillside. It's gorgeous. And you get up to this little town, and then you go to this church. It's about like the size of St. Mary's. And you go inside, and then kind of in a side room, there's this chapel, and it's dedicated to a Eucharistic miracle. And then as you approach, there's this, it kind of looks like the monstrance we'll have out here, but it's holding what almost looks like, I don't know, a chunk of dead meat or something. And it's kind of like, what is that? Well, what it is it's a priest who was struggling with his own faith in the Eucharist. Like, is that really Jesus? And in any vocation, there are struggles. I can tell you, in mine, there are definitely struggles. So this guy was struggling with the belief in the core of what he's doing, the Eucharist. And so he's celebrating the Mass, and during the Mass, the host, the bread, the wafer, transformed into a piece of flesh with blood. Now, we might say, that's good piety, Father, that's a nice story. But the Vatican is always good about due process, because they don't want people going to places that are sketchy. And so they tested it. They tested it. And not only is it human flesh, but they could type the blood. It's human blood. So again, this is the reality that what we do as Catholic Christians, this is real. You're not just sitting with a wafer, kind of like, and we're not doing yoga. I know that this meditation's is real, not possible, it's real popular. right? If I'm an Olympic athlete, I'm going to sit and I'm going to meditate. I'm going to, every stride I run, right? That's what they say happen. Visualize the race, right? Or if I'm a Hollywood actor, I'm gonna go to my yoga class. And we're gonna stretch and we're gonna breathe and all these, right? You know, and it's all fine. What you're searching for, though, is the source. The source of all of these things. And the source is God. And the invitation is to enter into a time meditating on Him. And the fruit of that is transforming. And so we're going to do that now. We're going to have a time of Eucharistic adoration over here for about a half an hour or so in our little side chapel. And on the chairs, at least on some, maybe I have to share, are some scriptures on adoration. And so if it gets boring, you know, maybe read those and pray about those. Also, in front of the altar, there are candles. And I invite you to go forward, light a candle in front of the Eucharistic Lord, and say a prayer. Especially maybe pray for someone else. The Lord knows what you need, but pray for the need of someone else tonight.